Good afternoon, I'm Bakhtiar Asanov and you are watching AnewZ. So let's see the top stories. US President Donald Trump selects a design for $175 billion Golden Dome missile defense system. Top finance officials from G7 countries begin a three-day summit in BANFF to discuss global economy and Ukraine reconstruction. The Budapest Declaration has been officially adopted during the informal summit of the Organization of Turkic States in Hungary. US President Donald Trump has officially approved the design of the Golden Dome system aimed at protecting the country from next-generation air and missile threats. Valued at $175 billion, the project is expected to be fully operational within 3 years. Trump says the system will be the most powerful defense shield ever built.
US President Donald Trump unveiled the final design of the ambitious $175 billion Golden Dome missile defense system, a strategic initiative intended to shield the nation from evolving threats posed by China and Russia.
This design for the Golden Dome will integrate with our existing defense capabilities and should be fully operational before the end of my term. So we'll have it done in about 3 years. Once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles even if they are launched from other sides of the world and even if they are launched from space. And we will have the best system ever built. As you know, we helped Israel with theirs, and it was very successful, and now we have technology that's even far advanced from that. It's amazing how easy this is.
The project is included in Trump's proposed One Big Beautiful Bill, which Congress has yet to approve.
The Golden Dome for America is a game changer.
I'm also pleased to report that the One Big Beautiful Bill will include $25 billion for the Golden Dome to help construction get underway. That's the initial sort of a down deposit. And we have probably, you're talking about, General, we're talking about $175 billion total cost of this when it's completed. This afternoon, I'm also announcing that I will appoint, very importantly, General Gutlein to lead the ambitious new effort as the direct reporting program manager for the Golden Dome.
The Pentagon says full construction could take decades, with space components alone costing up to $542 billion over 20 years. The system aims to detect and destroy missiles at all stages, using hundreds of satellites. Trump says it can intercept missiles launched from anywhere, including space.
Very small expansion.
We say we will protect the homeland from cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, drones, whether they're conventional or nuclear.
Defense experts warn that US missile systems lag behind Russia and China's advanced weapons, with both nations targeting weaknesses in current defenses, according to the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Canada wants to be a part of it, which be, fairly small expansion. But we'll work with them on pricing. We'll be dealing with them on pricing. They know about it very much. They've asked to be a part of it, actually. They've asked us to be a part of it. I think it's something that is great if you can afford to do it.
Inspired by Israel's Iron Dome, the new Golden Dome will be larger and more versatile, targeting hypersonic missiles and space-based threats with advanced technology.
We think it's going to be about a little bit less than 3 years. And we'll have a big phase-in very early. We're starting immediately with $25 billion. It'll cost about $175 billion completed, but we think in 2.5 to 3 years.
SpaceX, led by Elon Musk, is set to be a main contractor, with firms like Palantir and Anduril also involved. However, Democrats have expressed concerns over transparency.
Secretary Hegseth and the General to please say.
Finance ministers from the G7 nations are meeting in BANFF, Alberta in Canada for talks on trade, global growth and Ukraine.
Finance ministers from the G7 nations have gathered in Banff, Canada for a 3-day summit. The meetings will focus on trade tensions, China's growing export surge, and financial support for Ukraine. Canadian Minister François-Philippe Champagne said Ukraine's reconstruction could cost more than $500 billion and confirmed Canada will continue backing Kyiv.
Seeing the report from the AMF that the reconstruction effort in Ukraine is going to be north of $500 billion US over a decade in order to rebuild this country, build back better together. And today was a moment that we could share. There's a lot that we could do together. We talked about energy infrastructure. We talked about infrastructure like roads, ports, railway. We talked about defense technologies. We talked about energy.
Ukrainian Finance Minister Sergei Marchenko, attending despite Ukraine not being a G7 member, urged stronger sanctions on Russia. He also called for the lowering of the $60 per barrel G7 price cap on Russian oil. The summit takes place under a changed political landscape. Since returning to office in January, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to cut Ukraine aid and pressed Kyiv into a critical minerals deal. His new tariff policy has triggered unease among G7 allies, with countries such as Japan, Germany and Italy facing possible tariff hikes by July.
China, first row.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is also pushing allies to take a tougher stance on China's export-driven economic model, which Washington blames for overcapacity and market disruption. The talks will also cover artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and ways to crack down low-value shipments from China, which the U.S. links to fentanyl smuggling. These meetings set the stage for next month's G7 Leaders Summit in Kananaskis.
Russia rejects Ukrainian and European accusations that it was trying to delay the peace process, but said no decision had been made yet on a venue for talks after being asked whether the Vatican could host. On Tuesday, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni confirmed Pope Leo's readiness to host talks.
As the Vatican emerges as a possible venue for the next round of peace talks, Russia has yet to respond to the proposal, but denies accusations from Ukraine and European leaders that it's intentionally delaying the process. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni confirmed Pope Leo's readiness to host talks and thanked him for his commitment to peace. The push for a ceasefire gained momentum after US President Donald Trump spoke separately with Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, calling the Vatican a powerful symbol for negotiations. Kyiv remains open to dialogue, with Zelensky reiterating his willingness to meet Putin directly and explore different formats. He also said a high-level meeting involving the US, Ukraine, Russia, European countries and Great Britain is being considered potentially in Turkey, the Vatican or Switzerland. Despite these efforts, Zelensky's advisor, Mihailo Podolyak, said recent diplomacy, including Trump's calls, has not led to major progress. Ukraine continues to demand a full, immediate and unconditional ceasefire. Moscow says it is ready to discuss a memorandum on a future peace accord, including ceasefire terms and timing, but insists the next move must come from Kyiv. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova accused Ukraine's European allies of blocking direct talks, but said those attempts have failed. Meanwhile, Ukraine's allies impose new EU sanctions on Russia. Germany's foreign minister stressed that Europe expects an immediate ceasefire while welcoming Ukraine's willingness to negotiate. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Russia may present its ceasefire proposal soon, allowing Washington and partners to assess Moscow's seriousness. However, the US has warned it may withdraw from talks if no progress is made soon. Analysts caution that with Washington potentially reducing its role and Russia showing little urgency, the path to peace remains uncertain and depends heavily on what happens next.
Pope Leo XIV held his first general audience at the Vatican, marking a historic moment for the Catholic Church. As he was driven through St. Peter's Square on top of the Pope-mobile, he was warmly welcomed by thousands of pilgrims and visitors. The pontiff stopped several times to bless infants, waving and smiling at the cheering crowd. Elected just 2 weeks ago, Pope Leo XIV is the first American to lead the global Catholic Church, a milestone that has drawn widespread attention and hope from faithful around the world. A former high-ranking Ukrainian official has been shot dead outside his children's school in the Spanish capital, Madrid. Police say the assailant who shot Andriy Portnov remains at large, as investigators try to understand whether the attack was politically motivated, personal, or something else entirely. Here is more details.
Andriy Portnov was previously a member of the Ukrainian parliament and a senior aide to former President Viktor Yanukovych. He was gunned down outside his children's school in Madrid. When emergency services arrived, they found Portnov dead, having suffered at least 3 gunshot wounds. The attacker reportedly fled into nearby woods. Local media suggest he may have received assistance, possibly from a second man on a motorcycle. Portnov was once one of Ukraine's most powerful political figures, serving as a senior aide to ousted President Viktor Yanukovych. After the 2014 revolution in Ukraine, Portnov fled the country. He returned briefly after President Zelensky was elected, but left again after being sanctioned by the US Treasury. It remains unclear who ordered the killing or why. Authorities have deployed drones and a helicopter to track the assailant, but so far no arrests have been made.
3 children and 2 adults have been killed in a suicide attack on school bus in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province. Around 40 students were on the bus, with many left injured. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, but Pakistan's Prime Minister blamed what he called Indian terror proxies for involvement in the attack. The accusation comes at a volatile moment in India-Pakistan relations. Earlier this month, the 2 nuclear-armed countries came the closest they had been to war in decades, before a ceasefire was declared. Israel's military says it's expanding its ground operation against Hamas in Gaza. Military Chief Eyal Zamir says Israel will capture more territory and continue destroying what he called terrorist infrastructure. On Tuesday, Israeli airstrikes hit several areas across Gaza, including 2 homes and a school. Gaza health officials say at least 18 people were killed, many of them women and children. Israel did not comment on the specific strikes, but has repeatedly claimed Hamas hides weapons and fighters among civilians, a charge Hamas denies. Meanwhile, fresh explosions lit up Gaza's skyline early on Wednesday, as global calls grow for more aid to reach civilians. European Union announces the lifting of all economic sanctions on Syria. This move aims to support the country's recovery following the ousting of President Bashar al-Assad in December 2024.
The European Union announced the lifting of all economic sanctions on Syria. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas emphasised that this decision aims to support Syria's economic recovery and promote stability in the region. However, sanctions related to the Assad regime and human rights violations remain in place.
On Syria, ministers agreed to lift all economic sanctions while maintaining those related to Assad regime and human rights violations. This decision is reversible and conditional also on progress. There can be no peace without the path to economic recovery, and we all need a stable Syria. Is everything really ideal there? No, it is not. It's very clear, but I think we need to give the Syrian people a chance.
Syrians in Damascus expressed optimism after European Union foreign ministers' statement about Syria. Residents called EU's decision an excellent step.
The lifting of sanctions by anyone in the world, whether Europe, America or any other state, is for the benefit of the Syrian Arab citizen. And of course we get optimistic by this. By God's will, the prosperity will begin in a short period of time.
It is an excellent step. In my opinion, thanks to Mr. Ahmed al-Shara, the President, and his team for the speed of the steps they made. In my opinion, the sanctions were against the Syrian people, and thank God, this is an excellent step for the people to see a big improvement and difference.
يلاقي التحسن الكبير.
The European Union's policy shift comes after President Donald Trump said last week he would order the lifting of US sanctions on Syria. The bloc has already eased sanctions related to energy, transport and reconstruction, as well as associated financial transactions. But some capitals have argued that the measures were insufficient to help support Syria's political transition and economic recovery.
The United Kingdom made a striking diplomatic move on Tuesday, suspending free trade talks with Israel and imposing sanctions on settlers in the West Bank. This came just hours after London warned of concrete actions if Israel escalated its military campaign in Gaza. The development marks a significant shift in tone from one of Israel's traditional Western allies and adds pressure to an already volatile regional crisis. Joining me now to unpack the implications of this decision is political analyst Philip Churm from Devon, UK. Mr. Churm, welcome to the program.
Hello.
Mr. Churm, the UK suspension of trade talks is a major diplomatic signal. What does this tell us about the changing tone of London's stance toward Israel?
There is this changing tone, and it is quite significant. I mean, speaking in Parliament yesterday, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, he had said that the United Kingdom was going to impose these additional sanctions on Israeli settler posts in the occupied West Bank. That's in addition to him calling on the Israeli ambassador to the UK, Tzipi Hotovely. He was summoned to the Foreign Office to basically say that they're at the point of drawing a red line under some of the activities that have been taken in Gaza during this particular conflict. This is in the light of a lot of the media coverage of the suffering of young children, of houses being destroyed, of hospitals being destroyed. But let's have a look at it. Although it's a major shift, there are critics of how far it's gone. There are some people who are saying it hasn't gone far enough. The former Labour MP Zara Sultana is accusing the Prime Minister of actually still being complicit in what she calls a campaign of collective punishment. And the former Labour leader, who's now an independent MP, Jeremy Corbyn, has said, look, you know, the only one way that the government can cease it, what he calls the complicity in genocide, he calls it, is by ending any kind of military cooperation. So the idea that some of the trade elements, that they will be suspending talks on a trade deal, is significant. There are still some people who say it doesn't go far enough.
But Mr. Churm, how significant are the new sanctions on West Bank settlers in practice, and what impact might they have on the ground?
It's significant in terms of publicity. It's significant in terms of the way in which it will be received both internationally and by the Israeli government. Specifically, it's imposed sanctions on 3 individuals, 2 illegal settler outposts, and I think it's 2 organizations which are seen to be supporting violence against Palestinian communities. But the thing is that the West Bank so far has largely gone under the radar since October the 7th, 2023. Significantly, we've got to remember that over 1,000 Palestinians have died in the West Bank. So that's not in Gaza, in West Bank alone, since October the 7th, 23. And that's largely to do with either protests or to do with resistance to settler communities. So however, settlers and settler communities are unlikely to change very much in terms of what they do, so long as they believe in their cause and are supported by the Israeli government, which they are.
So in your opinion, could this influence other European countries to take similar steps?
Well, it already is to some extent. The European Union has already voted to review its trade cooperation deal with Israel in the same way that the UK itself has. How significant is that? Well, the EU as a body is Israel's biggest single trading partner, and it accounts for about 1/3 of Israel's total trading goods. So it's quite significant. So it would have a significant impact on the Israeli economy. In particular, though, a lot of those deals are in pharmaceuticals, certainly coming to the UK and into the rest of the EU. So the company Teva is one of the biggest pharmaceutical firms in Israel and supplies a lot of pharmaceuticals, which are seen to be essential in the for both European medical care and the rest of the UK too. So they're treading quite cautiously on that one, but nevertheless they've stated quite clearly that they are looking at it very, very carefully in order that they do not want to be seen as being complicit in what they see as being Israel's actions towards Palestinians, both in Gaza and in the West Bank.
Political analyst Philip Churm, thank you very much for talking to AnewZ. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Sure.
The Turkic State Summit was held in Budapest, marking the first time such a gathering took place on European soil and in an observer state. Leaders from across the Turkic world came together in Hungary to strengthen regional unity, enhance economic cooperation and address common security challenges. As part of the summit, the Budapest Declaration was adopted. Our correspondent AnewZ reports from Budapest.
The informal summit of the Organization of Turkic States concluded here in Budapest. The presidents of the member states, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, were hosted by Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. This was the first such gathering on European soil and in an observer state in the OTS. Many things were mentioned here. Budapest Declaration was adopted by the leaders of these countries. The OTS countries reaffirmed their unified stance on securing Afghanistan, on ensuring stability in the country and providing humanitarian aid. They spoke on enhancing trade and developing further infrastructure on the middle corridor to facilitate even greater trade turnovers. A lot has been said on the importance of the digital transformation, raw critical materials and innovation. Green energy was also on the agenda. There was also one appointment made for the chief of the European headquarters of the Organization of Turkic States right here in Budapest. When it comes to the inner workings of the ODS, the organization Secretary General said that about a third of the points in the action plan adopted in the previous summit in Bishkek have already been accomplished. When it comes to what some of the leaders have said, the host Orbán thanked all the OTS countries for their partnership and for their help when Hungary needed it most. The Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev spoke on the great deal of investments being made in developing infrastructure that's on the middle corridor.
Komşu ülkelerle yeni emektaşlık formatları yaratmış, müşterek müesseseler kurmuşuz.
We have created new cooperation formats with the neighboring countries and established joint ventures. Last year, thanks to Azerbaijan's investments, the cargo handling capacity of the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railroad, part of the middle corridor, was increased to 5 million tons. We place special significance on the digitalization of the middle corridor. Work is underway on a project for a single digital platform to streamline transport operations and trade between the Caspian ports.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called for the budget of the OTS to be doubled so that cooperation could go even further. These are just some of the messages. The cooperation within the OTS continues, and it continues this week in Baku, where the ministers of internal affairs of OTS are scheduled to meet. From Budapest for AnewZ, AnewZ.
Yassin Husseinzadeh, who attacked Azerbaijan's embassy in Iran, was executed today in Tehran. The armed assault took place on the 27th of January in 2023. One embassy staff member was killed and 2 others were injured. It happened at around 8 a.m. local time when a man armed with a Kalashnikov rifle bypassed the embassy's guard post, entered the building and opened fire. All the embassy staff tried to stop the attacker. He managed to kill Orkan Askarov Smirnov, the head of the embassy's security service, and injured 2 other employees. Following the incident, the embassy suspended its operations in Tehran. The diplomatic mission resumed activities in July last year. Iran has stressed the importance of stable and secure borders in the South Caucasus during a meeting with Armenia's defense minister in Tehran. Defense Minister Aziz Nasirzadeh called the Iran-Armenia border a historic link between the two nations and said it must not be altered. He underlined that preserving territorial integrity is a key pillar of Iran's regional policy. Nasirzadeh also described Armenia as a strategic neighbor in Iran's broader approach to the region. Uzbekistan has announced new visa policies to boost tourism, aiming to attract 15.8 million foreign visitors and generate $4 billion in tourism exports by the end of 2025. Starting from the 1st of June, citizens of Bahrain, Kuwait and Oman will be granted visa-free entry for up to 30 days. Additional plans are underway to allow citizens of Azerbaijan, Russia and Kazakhstan to enter using only their national ID cards or internal passports, including children under 16 with a kinder passport. These initiatives are part of a broader strategy to simplify travel and enhance tourism business and humanitarian connections. Azerbaijan's road to rebuilding its liberated territories is facing a silent and deadly enemy, landmines. In Karabakh and eastern Zangezur, massive demining efforts are underway. But the danger remains. This report takes us to Agdam district, one of the most heavily mined regions in the country.
The scars of war remain buried in the soil. Since 2020, Azerbaijan has been carrying out one of the world's most extensive humanitarian demining missions. The goal, to clear these territories of explosives and pave the way for safe reconstruction and return.
According to official data, more than 37,154 hectares of land have been cleared of mines and unexploded ordnance in Agdam. In total, over 31,500 explosive devices have been located and neutralized. Priority areas for clearance, including the Barda-Agdam Railway, the Fizuli-Agdam Highway and other strategic infrastructure zones.
During this activity, our personnel have undergone high-level training, and as a result of the head of state's instructions, they have been equipped for the effective implementation of clearance activities. Our mission is not only technical, it's about protecting lives. Every mine we remove brings us one step closer to safely rebuilding homes, roads, and entire communities in Karabakh.
In one of the most contaminated regions of Karabakh, clearing operations rely on a multi-layered approach. Teams on the ground are supported by advanced mechanical tools, enhancing both speed and precision in identifying hidden threats.
In addition to AnewZ's mine search team, mechanical mine clearance equipment and specially trained mine detection dogs are involved in the cleaning activities. This is considered one of the areas most contaminated with mines and unexploded ordnance.
Mine clearance operations in Agdam district are currently underway in stages. Azerbaijan National Agency for Mine Action and Ministry of Emergency Situations teams are mapping dangerous areas and preparing for the next phase of demining. Access to this territory remains restricted and movement is only permitted with special authorization.
Mine contamination doesn't just halt construction, it kills. Since the 2020 war ended, 394 people have become mine victims. 70 have died and 324 have suffered injuries in Azerbaijan. More than 210 of the victims were civilians, including 14 children and 1 woman. Despite Azerbaijan's repeated calls for transparency, Armenia has failed to provide accurate minefield maps. Experts estimate 1.5 million mines were planted during the occupation, turning fertile land into a deadly trap.
In addition to the road, the land has been cleared for agricultural fields, fruit gardens, and other infrastructural areas, and has been brought to a dangerous situation. I would like to use this opportunity to call on our citizens and our people to impose unlawful entry into the dangerous parts of the lands liberated from occupation, because this is dangerous for their lives.
Just last week, AnewZ cleared nearly 1,292 hectares across 14 districts, including Shusha, Fuzuli, and Lashin, recovering 36 anti-personnel mines, 23 anti-tank mines, and 377 unexploded ordnance. With new hazards uncovered each week, mine clearance remains one of the most critical conditions for restoring infrastructure, ensuring safe returns, and advancing reconstruction in Azerbaijan's liberated territories.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to AnewZ.